All right, students, we are continuing our unit on percent, and we're still in the introduction. We're still looking at what percents actually are and how we can convert between fractions and percents. So I just want to walk you through how you can do some of the problems that I'm going to assign you for working class today. This is going to be a really short video to allow you to spend the time doing the work and participating, so I can see if you're making any errors or congratulate you if your process is all set. And then we'll have another lesson tomorrow where you're going to get to learn some new topics. So in the first exercise, you can see here that you have different hundredth squares. Remember, a hundredth square is made up of 100 little blocks in 10 rows and 10 columns. So percent really means out of 100. When you're looking at the square and converting that image into a written percent, what you need to do is count the number of squares that are shaded, and that's going to be your percent. So in problem A, we can count that in the first column there are 7 squares shaded, and there's no other squares shaded, so the answer is going to be 7%. And so on and so forth. In exercise 1, every single time you'll be counting the squares and then writing your answer in the line below. In the second part of exercise 1, now you have to be the one to shade. So in the first problem, you're to shade 80% of the whole, and in the second problem, you're to shade 63. Now these numbers are pretty big. Once again, I recommend that you don't necessarily go box by box, but instead you can use what you know about the rows and columns in a 100 square and shade accordingly. So if you shade an entire column or an entire row, you know you're shading 10. So you might want to count by tens and then add any ones that are necessary. That's how you're going to solve the problems on this page, counting the squares and writing the percent, or looking at the percent and shading the squares. Now on the next page, you're going to be expressing each fraction as a percent. Remember that percent means out of 100. And when we see 100 on the denominator of a fraction, that also means out of 100. So for example, in problem D there, we see 71 hundredths. 71 over 100 is the same as 71 out of 100. So we can write 71%. Okay? Don't think about it too hard. You're just converting from the idea of a fraction to the idea of a percent. Now, in problem number 4, you're going backwards, the opposite way. You have a percent, 7%, okay, in problem A. And you need to change that into a fraction that's out of 100. So 7% is the same as 7 hundredths. You need to fill in the missing 7 in the numerator spot. What I want you to see here is the pattern that the denominator is where we're putting what it's out of. So that's where we're going to see a lot of 100ths. And the numerator is going to be the number that shows how many we've shaded or how many we've selected out of 100. All right, this page should be pretty quick for you. And finally, the trickier bit. You have some percents, and now I want you to convert it to a fraction, but you also need to put the fraction in the simplest form. Okay, so now you're applying a skill that you've already practiced many moons ago when we studied fractions. Let's start with example A. So example A, 22% is 22 over 100. We've practiced that many times. Now you need to look at 22 and 100. You're going to find their greatest common factor. Divide by the greatest common factor to simplify the problem. Remember that we always have to divide by the numerator and the denominator by the same factor. It has to be the same factor, otherwise they won't be equivalent. So when we're looking for the greatest common factor between two numbers, we want to start with the smaller number. So let's start with 22, and we'll use the rainbow method to find the factors of 22. 22 is the same as 1 times 22. It's also the same as 2 times 11. 22 is not divisible by 3, or 4, or 5, or 6, or 7, or 8, or 9, or 10. So the factors of 22 are 1, 2, 11, and 22. Now, when we're trying to find the common factor between 22 and 100, we start with the biggest factor first. Try with the bang for your buck. Does 22 fit neatly into 100? No, it doesn't. 22, 44, 66, 88, boop, we're already over 100. So boop, we're not going to work on 22. The next greatest factor was 11. Does 11 fit into 100? Well, no. We know 11 times 9 is 99, so there's no way 11 can fit neatly into 100. Boop. Now our only factors left are 1, which is useless to us because when we divide by 1, nothing changes, and 2. So we need to divide by 2. 22 divided by 2 is 11. 100 divided by 2 is 50. So our answer to number A is 11 over 50, or 11/50ths. That's what you need to do for each problem. I recommend that you first write it as a fraction over 100. So go ahead and take those numbers, just copy them, and write them over the denominator 100. Then think about the common factors between 100 and your numerator and divide in order to simplify your fraction. When you can't divide them anymore by the same number, for example, 11 and 50, don't share any common factors except the number 1, which once again, doink, is useless. So when you can't divide them anymore, then you have a simplified fraction. Just to review, this video is just showing you how to do each problem. Here, you count the shaded squares and write the percent. On the bottom, you look at the percent and shade the squares. On the top, you're going to convert your fraction to a percent, remembering that percent means out of 100. In the bottom section here, you're going to fill in the missing number, knowing that the number that we're selecting usually becomes the numerator and the percent or 100 becomes the denominator. Finally, you're going to completely convert percents to fractions using everything you know. And even more especially, you will simplify the fractions to put them in the simplest form. Thanks. Let me know on Hangouts if you have any questions about this assignment.